Okay, I'm going to show you all how to make a quick animated GIF or GIF in Photoshop. It's a pretty simple process in this application, but the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously find yourself the image or images that you are going to animate. And there's some pretty big limitations within this animation process, which I'll show you when we get to it, that might dictate the kind of image you use. But there's also a lot within that limitation that can be you know bent a little bit to have it fit your process, or you can use that to drive a new idea. And so it's a pretty fun, simple application to make a little bit more of a customizable GIF or GIF, rather than using one of these websites that sort of generate it for you automatically. They have more of like a Instagram sort of purpose, or like a pop culture purpose, and so you have a little bit less flexibility there. Not to mention you're sort of feeding their machine, and so this is a nice process to go through if you want a little bit more control, um, and it's not too complicated to figure out. So once you find your image, the first thing that I would do is I would check its size. Okay, so because these are internet-based applications, meaning the GIF or the GIF is designated to a URL, right? Like it's designated for the internet. It needs that medium. Um, your resolution is just going to be 72, okay? Because that's the screen resolution for most computer screens. Most websites are around 1024 pixels wide. Whereas most screens now are 1080p or something like that is where those numbers come from. My recommendation, like we mentioned a couple weeks ago when I was talking about ice cream, the more frozen, the bigger this file can be to start with. It can always go smaller, but once you start having a small image at the origin and then trying to increase its size, or embedding it into a website by increasing its size, sometimes you run into pixels that get, you know, stretched out, it gets pixelated, or if you have a really big file used for the animation, it will lag and it won't have the proper movement that you're looking for. It'll be, all choppy and that kind of thing. Okay. So the good news is if you're stealing images from the internet, like I did in this case, to make these GIFs or GIFs, they most likely will already be at 72 ppi, or bigger. Most won't be smaller, and so you'll be able to use it that way. But if you're using one of your own images, you'll want to make sure that you downsize it at least to 72 resolution. And I'll leave this one at 1024 because I know I'm going to make it smaller, um, and this is plenty to work with. So just sort of keep that in mind. It's a nice thing to check before you start, because if you get into this whole process and then you come to find out that it's all pixelated or laggy when you put it on your website, you'll have to go back and fix some things, and that can slow you down or cause some frustration. So it's nice just to double check before you start. Okay. So now that I know that this image is going to work for me, I need to isolate it. Okay. And the reason I need to isolate it is because this image, even though our brains are separating these out, meaning like, we look at this is the background and this is the image. The way that this image works for Photoshop is that this is all, it doesn't differentiate between these two things. This is all one image. And so if I copy and paste this into a transparent background, which is what I'm going to use to make the GIF, um, it will include this white box, and it will be a white box with Yosemite Sam in it bouncing around rather than a cutout figure. And so you can sort of consider, what you want this way, and you can always copy and paste this in as is, but I'm going to show you how to cut it out because that, will give you another tool under your belt to do that with. Okay. So all of these three tools right here on the left bar are selection tools. They're called marquee tools. Um, you can use any of these to do this with. My recommendation, and anticipating that most of you will find this tool the most beneficial, that is the quick selection tool. Okay. It bases its selection on edges. And so this image is a really easy image to cut out because it has a black background, or sorry, a black outline and a white background. And so with that, it's got these really hard edges that this quick selection tool can sort of anticipate. Okay. And so you can see if you just click once, it sort of guesses. And then as you click more and more and drag, it will start including more of this information, as you drag it along. Okay. So I'll go down here and do this. And then I'm just going to pause this and make a better selection tool, and then I'll show you what to do with it from here. So now I have most of this generally selected, okay? But I'm going to go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to show you how you can be a little bit more precise if you need to be, okay? So let's say as I zoom in, I can see that, it's not including some of this outline here. So my selection tool is too big. So you can either go up here and slide this down. This is how you customize the size. And the hardness is the sort of dictation of how much of the edge to include and how much of the edge to exclude, meaning like the contrast is basically how it determines this. Okay. And so if you increase this hardness up here, it's going to have a really strict designation of what it includes. And if you lower this, it's going to reduce it and include more things. Okay. So the shortcut for this is these bracket tools above the return key on a Mac. So you can more quickly go up and down. If you want to include, you can see the little plus signal in the middle of my selection tool. If you hold Option, it will toggle. If you push it and let go, it will toggle back and forth between plus and minus. You can also see that it does it up here when I push that. And so you can push those two if you want that. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce this down a little bit. And I'm just clicking single clicks, and it's telling the line that this is not the line I want, try another one, basically, okay? As opposed to clicking and dragging, okay? We'll go there. And so I see that it's now jumping this hole. So I want to make sure that it's not doing that. I'm going to reduce this. You can zoom in a little bit more. Reduce that out. And so now I've got this, and I'll go in and fix that in just a second. So now it's gone up into this arm and made a cutout here that matches this, okay? And so the better cutout you do, like if you can zoom in and really cut these out, the better GIF you'll have. At some point, it's not going to show up just because it's such a small medium, meaning like you can't really zoom in on these, and so you have some flexibility and some freedom where it's pretty forgiving that way, okay? So I'm going to go in and clean this up, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to isolate it from its background layer, okay? And so the way that you can do this, there's a couple of ways. The easiest way is to select the positive of what you're trying to isolate, and when you're finished highlighting everything and you've gone in and you've gotten all these little discrepancies out of here, with that selection being made, you can hit Command J, and you can see now that this is deleted out of here, okay? But he's lost his ring, so I'll go back in there and grab that, okay? But if you isolate it out of there, then this background is now transparent, and now when you go through to make a selection, it will copy that, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go back into here and spend a little bit more time so that I can get that that hat rim to show up, because it's really important, and then I'll hop back in and show you what it looks like as a new layer. Okay. Now I have this isolated a little bit better. So if I make this background layer invisible, you can see this is a better cutout with a little bit more time. If you click and drag around some of those hard edges of outlines, it'll be a little bit, it tells it a little bit more that, this is a continuous line, so to follow that. So just sort of try different things out if you're not familiar with, sort of the nuances of how to click in Photoshop. They've done a lot of work to make those more diverse and how they can help you. So once you have this layer isolated on the background, you can just actually delete the background layer. And now we're left with just this transparent background with this image in the middle of it, okay? And this is what we're going to use for the GIF. So now what you need to do is, and you can do multiples of these, which I'll show you in just a second. So you just want to have them all kind of ready if you're going to do multiple images in the animation. So now what you're going to need to do is you're going to make a new template, a blank background that you can create the animation in. And so as we just talked about, you're going to go to you're gonna make something that will fit your website. And like I said, websites are 1024 pixels wide or thereabouts. And so if you don't know what yours is, or if you think you want something smaller, or for some reason like wider, like if you have like an infinite scroll screen to the right or something, you can play around with that. But for the most part, my recommendation is to create a 2000 pixel minimum image or thereabouts. Okay, so you're gonna go to File and New. And so here's this 1024 preset. This is a website standard pixel dimension. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're in pixels and not inches, okay, because that's how websites are measured. And so I'm actually going to make a square one just out of simplicity's sake. And I'm going to check my resolution is 72 and 2000 and 2000. Make sure that everything is at 72. Okay, the pixel dimension you can play with, but it's important that the resolution is at 72 for this. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create. Oh, I did the wrong thing. So when you go into here, we're going to do 2000 and 2000. Oops. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that your background is transparent. Same as our Yosemite Sam. You can do white and black backgrounds, or you can pick a custom color, or you can even have an image as a background for this. The nice thing about transparent backgrounds is that they can be put over top of images without being bound to them. And then furthermore, with the background, if you put this in an application on a website or something like that, you're going to have a framed wall around this at 2000 and 2000 pixels that's going to dictate the frame. And so if you know you want that frame, go for it, and you can have a whiter colored background. If you're not sure how this is going to fit in terms of size, it's nice to have transparent backgrounds. And then you can always go in later and put, a solid color and image as the background. So we're going to hit transparent, and then we're going to hit create. Now we're here, okay? Okay, now that we have our basic frame for our GIF or GIF, what we are going to do is we are going to place our image into this template, this frame. And so this one, I've already hit it, but you just have to hit Command A, and it will select the entire frame. But because this is a transparent background, while it looks rectangular, it actually is including this, but it makes no difference because it's invisible, okay? So Command A will select everything, Command C will copy it, and then we'll go ahead and paste it into here. And so obviously, I don't know, not if it's obvious, but I want something a little bit smaller. I want more bouncing around, I want more animation. And so I'm gonna go ahead and change the scale of just this image, okay? And so if I hit Command T, it will just isolate this one image within my frame as opposed to the whole thing. And then I can just sort of scale this down. So for our purposes, that'll work, okay? So you hit enter and it locks it in. And so we can move this around. So I'm gonna start it up here. Okay. So next what we need to do is we need to show the timeline window so we can create the animation. And in order to do that, you go to the top and you hit window, and then you'll go down to timeline. Most people don't have this visible on their screen just because it's really only useful for making animations and videos. But when you hit it, it will pull open this animation box down here. Okay. And so now what you need to do is, there's two options, right? There's one to make a video timeline and there's one to make a frame animation. What we're gonna do right now is make a frame animation, okay? And so with that selected, go ahead and hit the button and it will do this, okay? And if you add one, it will duplicate this frame, okay? But within these two frames, you have control over the image separately, okay? So if I move it here, it will only move it in this frame, and if I move it with this selected, it will only move it in there, which is important because this is the starting and stopping point for this image, basically. So you can see now that it's moved down here, and this one it's hidden by the one, but it's up in that upper left corner, okay? So what we're gonna do now is really important. We're gonna create the frames in between, and Photoshop has done a really nice job of doing this for you based on, you know, a linear connection between these 2 points. So with Shift, I'm gonna push and select one, so now these are both selected. And then this little box down here, let's see if it'll show up. There you go. It's called tweens, animation frames, and it's just the tweeners, meaning the in-between frames. And so here, when you click on this, it's going to give you a dialog box that will ask you how many images or how many frames you want between 1 and 2. And so obviously the more you have in between, the smoother the animation will be, and the less, the more choppy. But there are pros and cons to each. So you can sort of try it out, and you can always undo and add more. I'm going to go ahead and put 10 in here just to show you it's pretty smooth. And it should auto-populate all the frames in between. Okay, so now we have 10 plus the start and the stop. And so you can test this by pushing play. Okay, and if this is annoying to you, you can change this down here just to like once so you can see what's going on. Okay, and then it stops. And then you add another frame and you tell it where else you want it to go. So now that it's on here, just make sure that it's on the following frame, otherwise you're going to be changing the stop point of 12. And so let's say we want it, we'll just have it go straight across in this case. Okay, hold shift so it selects both, hit the tweener button, we'll say 10 again just for fun. Okay, so now it should go down and to the right. Okay, so you can see that this is faster because it's a shorter distance than this, but using the same number of frames. So the animation is a lot smoother and it appears a lot faster. Okay, so you can adjust the speed, speaking of which, by delaying how many seconds go between each one. So let's say we just want this one to be 1 second. It'll like start and stop it now. So it'll go, oops, sorry. Okay, and so you can go in there and have all sorts of customizing and stop it out and block it that way. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and scroll over here, and I'm going to go ahead and just make this go around the circle, around the square, basically, and then I'll turn the video back on. Okay, so what I've had, I varied the frame rate from some of these just to sort of see what it looked like with it all choppy and varied. And I changed this to 3 times just to sort of see what it looks like in a loop. So what's nice about this is that you can set this GIF to run on an infinite loop when it's on your website. But if you don't have the same start and stop points, it's going to show up. And so in this case, I've aligned them, and it will basically make a continuous loop. So there's that pause, and away it goes. Okay, I only did 3 frames across here, so it's super choppy but really fast. Okay, and then I could go in and adjust these if I wanted it to be more stuttery or however I want to do it. Okay, and if you ever make a mistake, you can always come back in here and you can trash out these animations by clicking and dragging them down. Just keep in mind that you're removing one of the frames from the sequence, so you'll either need to put it back in, or you'll need to make sure that you're deleting them in like a strategic point where you can add more at the end or the beginning rather than in the middle. Okay, so let's say, just for the sake of time and this recording, that this is satisfying to me. I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted. I just like this sort of stop and start thing, and away we go. I'm ready to save this as a GIF. Okay. So the way that you do this is you go ahead and go up to File. So if you go up to File, you can save it as just a straight up GIF, which is right here. Okay, and so we can call this Yosemite Sam 2, because there's this Yosemite Sam 1 already on there. So if we go to Yosemite Sam 2 and hit save, okay, it will bring up these options here. Okay, and you shouldn't have to do anything with them. You can optimize it for Macs or whatever, but the local selective is the most common and usable one. These are just stylistic options that you can try out if you want. So if you hit OK, it should populate it here, and so there you go. That's the untitled one. This is the one we just did. And you can put that GIF into wherever you need to. As an old guy, the way that this used to happen, it gives you a little bit more control, is if you go to export, this is another way to do this, and you go to save for web, this is a legacy thing, meaning that it's for people like me who did this a long time ago and are used to old buttons and refuse to use new ones. But it does give you a little bit more control, actually, is why I like it. So if you go to save for web legacy through export, it will pull up in a larger dialog box eventually. And here you can preview it. I'm not going to click on it because I'm using Kaltura, and it will pull open a web browser tab with this animated GIF on it, so you can see what it looks like on a website on the internet, and you can sort of make adjustments there if you need to before you actually save it. That's what the preview is for there. You can also adjust these same things that we just talked about. The thing that I like about it here is that it gives you the option to loop it not forever, which the other one defaults to. Most applications you'll want it to do it forever, right? And this means based on somebody navigating to the website that it will do it 3 times or once, or you can go in and do custom and have it do so many, X amount of times if you have some reason for doing that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and hit forever, and then you can hit done or save. In this case, we want to save it. Okay, and then it'll pull up in that dialog box that we just saw a second ago. And so we can do Yosemite Sam 2 here. We'll go to desktop. Okay. And then we'll hit save. And then that little guy is there. Okay. And so this image, right, or this file rather, is the actual file that you can put into websites. So on my website, the way that I have it is I have an image as a background through Squarespace is my host. Image as a background, and then I have this image on top as a transparent background GIF on top of the image that's being used as the background on the website, if that makes sense. So they're actually separate files that are being layered on top of each other, and that gave me a little bit more control. It also was a little bit easier to manufacture, and it enables me to use this across a variety of platforms without having to commit to something else. Okay. But you can, obviously save it as a variety of file types if you want to. So you can see there's actually quite a bit of creativity. You can put more than one image into here, meaning like you can, add a bunch of little Yosemite Sams or something like that, and animate those together. Okay. And so you can have them bouncing like pinballs or something, or you can have them overlapping in a really strategic way if that's, more your style. So there's quite a bit of flexibility with this process once you know the basics. But that's about it. That's about how you make a GIF through the timeline feature in animation in Photoshop.